Test J, section 2, question 21. A driver says, "My friends say I will one day have an accident because I drive my sports car recklessly." Okay. But it continues. Who's on? Can you please mute yourselves? Thank you. But I have done some research, and apparently minivans and larger sedans have very low accident rates compared to sports cars. What are you going to tell me? You're going to get a minivan? So trading my sports car in for a minivan would lower my risk of having an accident. Well, okay. On the one hand, it is true. Minivans probably don't get in as many wrecks as sports cars. And yeah, it might be the case that if you get a minivan, you will stop driving as recklessly as you currently drive your sports car. It's also possible that you drive your sports car recklessly because you're an idiot. And if you get a minivan, you might continue to drive that minivan just as recklessly. In fact, it might not be built to handle your kind of reckless driving. You might actually be more likely to get in an accident if you start driving a minivan the way you drive your sports car. Your job is to disagree. Okay? So, I grant, yeah, it's possible that this change might reduce your risk of accident, but it certainly doesn't guarantee that it reduces your risk of accident, because you could drive a minivan like an idiot just as easily as you could drive a sports car like an idiot. The reasoning in the driver's argument is most vulnerable to criticism. That the argument what? This is a flaw question. Flaw questions are also in the top-down, must-be-true universe, okay? Did they do it, and is it a problem that they did it? That's our analysis as we go into these answer choices. Basically, what did they do wrong? The reasoning question that we did right before this one was about what did they do. Flaw questions are one step further. Not only did they do it, but it's wrong that they did it. I think I have a pretty good prediction here, right? I was attacking this argument saying, well, wait a second, you could continue to drive your minivan like a dick. I don't see why you automatically are going to drive safer, even if minivans do tend to get in less accidents. I'm pretty sure I'm right on top of it here. A says, it infers a cause from a mere correlation. I didn't use those words, but it did do that, right? This driver, says, well, sports cars have higher accident rates than minivans. That's a correlation. And then, by assumption, the driver has said, oh, so if I get a minivan, that will cause me to drive safer. It's a correlation. I didn't even spot it, but it is a correlation, therefore causation argument. The answer here is going to be A. There was a correlation about safety, and the driver thinks that means that there's a causal relationship there, which may or may not be true. B, did it rely on a sample that is too narrow? Absolutely not. Where's your evidence for that? The question we just saw previously said 1% of all residents. There was evidence in the passage that it had dealt with a small sample. This question, the driver does rely on testimony of his friends, but that's not actually his real logic. His real logic is, well, there is a correlation between minivans. Minivans are safer than sports cars. That's not a small sample. He's not relying on his friends anymore. He's citing that as a correlation that exists. C, misinterprets evidence that a result is likely as evidence that the result is certain. It didn't do that. It never said, Biden is likely to win the election, therefore Biden guaranteed is going to win the election. It just didn't do that. That would be a flaw, but it didn't do that. D, mistakes a condition sufficient for bringing about a result as a condition, basically confuses sufficient for necessary. You guys, by the time you get any good at the LSAT at all, you will know the sufficient and necessary flaw backward and forward. if they had done that in their argument, you would have been yelling about it way before you ever read that in the answer choices. So sufficient for necessary is the LSAT's most common flaw. It will be the correct answer frequently, but they didn't do it here, so it's easy to dismiss that answer. E, relies on a source that is probably not well informed. Where did it do that? As far as we know, this guy's friends work for the car safety transport, whatever, I have no evidence that they're not well informed. I have to pick A here because it's the only one that I'm sure this driver did. The driver cited a correlation, that's the safety figures, and then in the driver's conclusion said, oh, so if I get a minivan, I'll drive safer, which is inferring causation from just a correlation, and that's why the answer is A.